You're listening to Storytime, old time radio for a new era. Thank you for joining us. In this series, we feature Terry Morgan reading from her work, The Ambassador, a fun, family-friendly sci-fi martial arts adventure. Previously, the Magellan was on its way to the remote Theta Alpha station. The Ambassador and her 4 old friends prepared for the mission. In this episode, Captain Logan calls Space Station Commander Lucas to ask him to prepare a formal reception on short notice. The Ambassador presents a rare, treasured star coin to each of the Aldaran pilots. During the mission, Kell takes his cruiser very, very close to an Olmeri ship. The Ambassador tricks the Olmeri into following. They lead the Olmeri into their trap. Then they head home. This episode brings together all of the core elements in the story. The teamwork, the camaraderie, the understanding that what we can do together is far more than what we can do alone. The advantages of teamwork was one of the things I wanted to bring out in the stories. The other was friendships. That we develop friendships, they aren't instant, is part of the story too. In this episode, the Ambassador's plan depends on Kell. They are going to get much too close to an Olmeri ship. He has to be able to get them out of trouble. She is depending on his flight skills, her level of trust in him, and her understanding that he is a warrior who will do everything he can and then some to protect his friends is part of the story too. That element in the stories that people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different generations, and different races can learn to trust each other, work together, develop friendships, and enjoy each other's company is the essence of the story. When I first started writing the stories, I thought quite a lot about who the characters were, what they might look like, what cultures they might be from, how they would move, what their backgrounds and backstories might be. I wanted to see their faces, but I can't draw. And more importantly, even if I found someone who could draw the images for me, the characters wouldn't be mine anymore. They would be the characters the artist who drew them envisioned. I could certainly make changes and we could talk about what I wanted. But at the end of the day, it would all come down to the way the artist represented the characters. The bigger problem was that I didn't know what they should look like. I had a general idea. I knew their basic characteristics, ages, and cultures, but I didn't have a clear visual for any of them. I started looking for a way to do what I wanted, create the characters. It's something games developers do too. I found some tools for games development and used them to create heads and faces for the characters. That was enough to give me what I was looking for, a writing prompt for each character. Now I could actually see who was speaking, and I knew clearly the physical characteristics I wanted to use. As the scenes in the story began to take shape, the characters took on more depth. The visualizations helped me with their dialogue and their relationships. Those visualizations were important for how I established the relationships between all the characters. How people speak with each other and the languages they use depends on the people involved. The cultural references and languages are intended to bring out the differences, highlight the similarities, honor the cultures, and give voice to languages that are both common and ancient. Languages are both a part of the culture and a reflection of the people who speak them. The words, the way the language sounds, the emphasis, the colors of the language come from the people who use it. In the stories, languages matter. I use English, French, and Chinese. They are modern languages used by millions of people today. They are also old languages. The old forms are not used today. I use Irish Gaelic and Lakota Sioux. They are old languages that have modern-day speakers who want to preserve them. Using real-world languages in connection with the characters was a risk, but I decided it was something I wanted to do. I worked at the possible translations. I asked questions of anyone I could find. I used my own linguistic skills and abilities. I still likely made mistakes, especially for the Lakota and Gaelic. Probably a few in French, too. Could my pronunciation be better? Of course. That was never a question. The question was always, what can I do now, today? That's something the characters ask in this episode. What can we do now? What can we do today? Now, continuing with the ambassador, chapter 7, going home, coming into the station, Captain Logan's quarters on the Magellan. Captain Logan was at his desk in his quarters reviewing the charts and plans. He was still having a bit of trouble seeing how this was going to work. Oh, he understood the plan and the tactics and what they hoped to accomplish, but he wasn't sure it was going to be enough. The Olmeri were persistent and formidable. They weren't going to be deterred easily. Captain, I have Station Commander Lucas for you, Commander Brandon said through his comlink. She had the watch. Put him through, Captain Logan replied. The comlink lit up. Commander Lucas appeared on the screen. Good morning, Captain Logan. We've been expecting you, he said. Commander Lucas, it's good to see you again. It's been a while, Captain Logan said. 8 years, isn't it? Commander Lucas asked. About that, I think, Captain Logan said. We'll have to catch up later. There are a few things we need to discuss, he said. Commander Lucas chuckled. You think? Some of your friends have already arrived, and we have 4 starships docked and waiting for something. We might have a few things to go over, just a few, he said. Captain Logan laughed. Mushrooms, Bob, mushrooms, he said. Commander Lucas laughed out loud. Indeed, Alex, that we are. So you called. What did you need me to do that you can't tell me about, he asked. Now it was Captain Logan's turn to laugh out loud. He composed himself and took a breath. I have a request from Ambassador Lawrence, he said. Does she want the dinner special or the lunch plate? Commander Lucas asked. Captain Logan laughed. Oh, you are so very close, so close. She'd like a formal reception to recognize the help we are getting from the Aldarans. Everyone in full dress for a formal presentation, he said, as quickly as he could, trying to get it all out at once. Well, that's quite a tall order on short notice. Does she understand what it's going to take to pull off any reception, let alone a formal one? And how far out are you? Commander Lucas asked. About 12 hours. I can make it 14 if that helps, Captain Logan answered. Commander Lucas laughed and shook his head. Okay, sure. 2 more hours would be great. Thanks. This is going to be a tough thing to pull off. We've got our regular duty and quite a bit to get done for your excursion. I'm assuming she wants compliments from all 4 ships, too, he said. Captain Logan nodded. She knows it's a really big ask. Trust me, I've been transporting her for a few months now. I've seen her pull off what should have been impossible more than once. She's good at it. If she thinks it can be done, it's possible. Highly improbable is something she does regularly, he said. But you just said she's not asking for just my people. She wants everybody. That means a full crew complement from each command and each ship, along with a presentation table and reception. Why does she need a big formal reception? Couldn't we do something smaller, less formal? Commander Lucas asked. Captain Logan shook his head. Not for this, he said. Commander Lucas shook his head again. It's a lot of work for a little recognition ceremony, he said. Bob, Captain Logan said. He looked at the screen and stopped. Maya, priority encryption, level 9, full scramble, your record only, both channels, he said. Commander Lucas shook his head. That's way above my pay grade, Alex, he said. You need to know, Bob. Maya, Captain Logan said. Yes, Captain, Maya said. The screens blurred, then became clear again. Captain Logan looked directly at the screen. The Aldarans have agreed to pilot for us. That much you know. What you don't know, and I'm not telling you right now, is that she doesn't want the Olmeri to know the Aldarans are with us. She wants the Olmeri to believe that maybe the Aldarans are teaching us, so she's going to arrange it so the Olmeri can see a Terran in a pilot's chair, he said. She's nuts. Does she know how close she will have to get? Commander Lucas asked. Captain Logan smiled and nodded in agreement. I have thought that exact thing several times myself, but she has a way of pulling off things that seemed impossible. One of the keys to her plan is the piloting skills of the Aldarans. She's counting on them to be able to do it, and Bob, I'm here to tell you, I've seen what Kell can do. Her confidence is well-founded. He's a magician in flight, he said. Commander Lucas nodded. Okay, now I get why she wants the reception. We're counting on the Aldarans for their expertise, and we're going to insult them by asking them to step aside and pretend a human can do what they can do. Right. Even with a nice reception, how is she going to pull that off without insulting them, he asked. Captain Logan shrugged. I don't know, but you're right. That's why she wants the reception, he said. Commander Lucas shook his head. All right, I'll take care of it. Give me as much time as you can. What's she going to present, he asked. Captain Logan turned his head with a puzzled frown. Yeah, he said. Commander Lucas smiled. She wants me to set up a reception for a formal presentation. What's she going to present, he asked. Captain Logan laughed. I don't know. She didn't say. I hadn't thought about it, he said. Commander Lucas nodded and grinned. Mushrooms, Alex, he said. Thanks, Bob, Captain Logan said. He closed the comlink, sat back in his chair, and frowned. What is she going to present, he thought. Short notice. The station commander's office. The station was remote. It was not tethered, so there wasn't much in the way of planetary decoration. Only a few potted plants were set out along the corridors. The loading area was busy. Central Alliance cargo ships had mineral dust and other supplies that had to be sorted, separated, and loaded on each of the 5 starships. The ambassador stepped off a transport platform onto the station. She walked down a wide hallway, then up a flight of stairs to the commander's office. She stopped at the open door and knocked. Commander Lucas looked up, stood, and waved to her to come in. I'm pleased to welcome you to Theta Alpha, Ambassador Lawrence. It's been a long time, he said. The ambassador grinned as she walked into his office. It has been a long time, Bob. You weren't a station commander then, she said. Commander Lucas grinned. And you weren't an ambassador, he said. They both laughed. I have quite a few memories of the days you flew transport for the trade missions I was assigned to escort, the ambassador said. Commander Lucas nodded. He gestured to a chair and went back to his desk to sit. The reception will be ready in about 3 hours. It's the best we can do. My staff have been working non-stop since I spoke with Captain Logan. They are putting the final touches on the side tables now. Once that's done, we'll notify everyone to assemble and bring out the food for the main table, he said. The ambassador smiled and looked at him closely. I appreciate the effort, Bob. My apologies for the late notice. Captain Logan said he told you it's important that, she said. Commander Lucas held up his hand to stop her. Ambassador, yes, he told me. I get it. I only meant that we could do better with more time. I've asked my chefs to include some Aldaran foods plus some fruit we've grown here on the station and add their own specialties. It will be a nice table, he said. The ambassador smiled. It sounds perfect, Bob. I really do appreciate the work it takes to put something like this together at the last minute. If it wasn't important, I wouldn't have asked. Thank you, and please extend my thanks to your staff for their hard work and efforts, she said. I'll be right back. Commander Lucas nodded. I will do that. We're happy to support your mission. Having the Aldarans bring their skills to the effort could make all the difference, he said. The ambassador took a deep breath, smiled, and stood up. Thank you, Bob. I should go get ready, she said. Commander Lucas stood up and nodded to her. You're welcome, Ambassador, he said. The ambassador took the long way back to the transport platform so she could have a look at the reception area. Red envelopes. The ambassador's quarters on the Magellan. The ambassador was sitting at the table in her quarters on the Magellan. She had almost finished getting dressed for the reception. She had asked Beth to get a small box from her shuttle. She kept several large cases with small bags and boxes that she might use during a trip. Some were personal items, others were gifts for those they might meet. The door chime sounded and the comm panel lit up. Come in, the ambassador called out. Beth came in smiling with the small box in her hand. I have the things you wanted, she said. She walked over to the table and put the box on it. She took a step back, still looking at the box. The ambassador smiled. You'd like to know what's in the box, she asked. Beth nodded. Yes, please. It has an odd feeling to it, she said. Come closer, the ambassador said. She raised the lid. Small lights flickered from inside the box. Beth leaned over and peered cautiously into the box. What are they? They're beautiful, she said. Inside the box were several small coins, unlike anything she had seen before. They glistened and glimmered. There were carvings on them. They looked like tiny mirrors, but the twinkling lights weren't reflected. They were coming from within the coins. The ambassador gestured for her to sit down and turned the box so Beth could see inside. These are Regulan star coins, she said. Beth peered into the box. She looked up at the ambassador. Where did they come from? How did they made? How did they get the little lights to shine from inside? Where did the lights come from, she asked. The ambassador sat back a little, smiled, and nodded. You ask good questions. These are very old coins. They come from Regulus too. We only know they are made of palladium and ionized silicon, fused through radiant fire and frigid water. The process is described in the ancient archives, but the art of actually making them was lost centuries ago, she said. Beth frowned and sat back in her chair. That's too bad. What are the carvings, she asked. The ambassador smiled, nodded, and took a few of the coins out of the box. She handed them to Beth. The carvings on the backs reference historical eras. The front depicts the ancient leaders of Aldaran, she said. Beth's eyes got bigger. She looked at the coins and turned them over. She looked up, not quite able to close her mouth. No way. Wait, you were serious. What are you going to do with them, she asked. The ambassador grinned. Where are the envelopes I asked you to bring, she asked. Here, Beth said. She took a small packet of red envelopes out of her pocket. The ambassador took the packet and pulled out 5. To answer your question, I'm going to put one of these coins in each of these envelopes. I'm going to present them to the Aldaran pilots at the reception, she said. She put one of the coins in each of the envelopes. Beth blinked. Your personal seal is on those envelopes, Ambassador. I thought you were just going to recognize their efforts with a nice reception and a speech, she said. The ambassador nodded and smiled. Well, yes, I'm going to do that. Please bring both archive cameras, she said. Ambassador, we only use the archive cameras for treaty signings, Beth said. The ambassador smiled and nodded. Ask Namani to help you, she said. Beth looked puzzled. This isn't just a reception, is it, she asked. The ambassador grinned like a Cheshire cat just beginning to appear and shook her head. No, she said. Beth smiled and nodded. Wow, whatever it is must be really important, she thought. The ambassador picked up the box and the envelopes. She handed them to Beth. Thank you. Would you please put these back where they were? I will meet you in the reception area. Let me know when you and Namani are ready, she said. Beth nodded and started for the door. Yes, Ambassador. It should only take a few minutes, she said. The ambassador nodded. Thank you, Beth. I'll see you shortly, she said. She watched Beth leave. Oh, she is a treasure. How many others would have seen those coins and wanted them? She thought they were pretty. She didn't want to keep them, she thought. The 5 envelopes were spread out on the table. They weren't sealed. The little lights from the coins peeked out from round the edges. Presenting the sun, a station promenade. A large projection screen on the side of one wall would let everyone see the presentation. The table was beautifully set and arranged with fruits, baskets of bread, several types of cheese, and small plates with pies and cookies. 2 colors of punch gave the table a festive appearance. Everyone was dressed in a formal uniform or formal attire. Centaur, Maru, Galen, and Biani stood near the front and just to one side. They were dressed formally, but not in their full colors. When they graduated from the program on Roz 2, the Council of 9 had cautioned them about appearing together in their full colors. They were the 5 elements, and that was absolutely not something to be revealed lightly or without consideration. For today, only the ambassador and the doctor wore their colors. The ambassador walked into the receiving hall. She was pleased. There weren't any open spaces. Namani and Beth had arrived and were set up on each side of the room. One camera would focus on the ambassador's presentation, the other camera would focus on the room. Beth waved to the ambassador and pointed at Namani. The ambassador waved back and nodded to Namani. She shook her head to let them know to wait. She spotted Kell standing with 4 Aldarans near the reception table. She walked towards them. Kell saw her coming. They all turned to wait for her to extend their greetings. "Welcome," the ambassador said. She crossed her arms, extended her palms, then lowered them. "Pilamaye, Hihunjini. I thank you all for having come here," she said. The 4 Aldarans were surprised. They looked at Kell. Kell nodded approvingly. "Ambassador Lawrence, please let me introduce Pak, Rai, Shora, and Beale. We have known each other since we were children," he said. The ambassador bowed. "I'm very pleased to meet all of you. We've arranged this reception to acknowledge what your being here means to all of us," she said. Pak stepped forward. "We understand the seriousness of this problem," he said. Kell nodded to him. "Pak is the oldest among us. He has the most experience. He is the best navigator in the galaxy," he said. "But you are the best pilot," Pak replied, nodding to Kell. Rai frowned a little at their banter. "Thank you for arranging this reception, Ambassador," she said. Shora stepped up behind Rai. "We're not going to be on display, right? It will only be a few minutes on screen," she whispered. The ambassador smiled gently. "No, you won't be on display, and yes, it will only be a few minutes. I will say a few words. You don't have to say anything. You can if you like, but you don't have to. Should be no more than 2 minutes, maybe 3. Then we will go eat. You saw the table, didn't you?" she asked. Shora grinned and nodded. The ambassador looked around the room. She nodded to Beth and Namani, signaling them to start recording. Then she walked to the center of the floor. She stood there quietly, then turned and gestured for Kell and his friends to come stand with her. The Aldarans formed a line next to her. The room became quiet. The ambassador looked up through the windows, then around the room, acknowledging where they were. "Thank you. The view from here is exceptional. I appreciate all of you being here today. I'd like to start my remarks by saying thank you to Commander Lucas and his staff for their work on this reception. Commander, on short notice, you have arranged an elegant table with baskets of fruits, plates of small pastries, pies, and a variety of cheeses that were all produced on the station. We thank you and your staff for your efforts and this amazing table today," she said. She extended her hand in a broad sweep toward several of the station staff in duty uniforms standing along the wall. They all stood just a little taller. "Today we have something to celebrate. As you all know, the Alliance has asked the Aldarans to stand with us to defeat the Olmeri and protect the local neighborhood. They have agreed. These 5 Aldaran pilots will fly with us. We honor our historic defense agreement with Aldebaran today," she said. She turned and bowed deeply to the Aldarans. The Aldarans bowed to her. This had all been planned. The ambassador bowed again to the hall. "In appreciation, I have a small token of thanks which I would like to present," she said. She walked toward the Aldarans. This was not planned. Everyone began to applaud. The ambassador stepped in front of each of the Aldarans. One by one, she took one of the red envelopes out of her pocket and with both hands presented it to the Aldarans. Kell was last. She stood next to him and turned to face the room. She looked at Beth and Namani. Beth knew that look. Something was about to happen that she needed to record. She checked her camera and signaled Namani to check his. She nodded to the ambassador. The ambassador stood quietly and looked around the room for what seemed a long time. It was as if she was looking at each person one by one and asking them to remember what she was about to say. That's exactly what she was doing. Finally, she smiled and nodded. In addition to the thanks of the Central Alliance, I extend my personal thanks to each of our Aldaran friends. I am in your debt, she said. Her voice seemed to fill the entire station. She crossed her arms, brought them down, and bowed deeply to the Aldarans. Beth almost dropped the recorder. For a first contact ambassador to say something like this was a really, really big deal. She was telling the Aldarans and everyone in the room and anyone who might ever see this archive that she was giving them a marker they could call in whenever they needed it. The ambassador turned slightly. There is one more thing, Kell. Would you please open your envelope into your hand, she asked. Kell looked puzzled. He shook his head slightly. Please, the ambassador said. She smiled and nodded to encourage him. Kell held out his hand and turned the envelope over. The coin fell out. Its light splashed rainbows across its face and his. Oh, oh, oh my. It's a star coin, he gasped. Tears began streaming down his cheeks. He looked at his friends and nodded. It's a Regulan star coin, he said quietly. The joy in his voice echoed through 500 years. The others crowded around Kell and the ambassador. They turned their envelopes over and let the coins fall into their hands. Kell looked up at her. Ambassador, how? These are among the most precious, the most revered artifacts of our people. For generations, our people were paid in star coins to escort travelers, he said. Pock stepped closer and held out his coin. His hand was shaking. Ambassador Lawrence, this is my ancestor. How did you? This is more than we could possibly have imagined, he said. The ambassador nodded to him. You deserve much more. We can talk later, she said quietly. She turned to the room. Once again, my deepest appreciation to all of you. Now let's all enjoy some of the fine foods Commander Lucas has put on these tables, she said. She extended her hand towards the tables, signaling Beth and Namani to pan the tables and stop recording. The room began to break up. The doctor, Centaur, Galen, Maru, and Biani already had plates in hand and were looking for a place to sit. Several lines had formed around the food tables. Kell moved closer to the ambassador. This is the most amazing, the most wonderful, he said. The ambassador smiled. I'm happy you are pleased, she said. Kell looked at her again with maybe just a bit of reverence. Then he saw something in her eyes. She understands. She really does know. She knows, he thought. He knew his friends had seen it too. They saw the coins. They definitely saw the coins. But the coins weren't as important as what he saw in her eyes. He didn't know how, but she knew. She could see them, who they were, and who their ancestors were. And she cared. It mattered to her that they existed, that they were who they were. She was a warrior who would defend them. And because of that, he would follow her. The ambassador nodded to him and pointed at the food tables. You should get something to eat while you can, she said. Kell grinned at her, motioned to his friends, and pointed. They nodded to him and started toward the tables. Ambassador, we won't ever forget this, Kell said. He hurried to catch up with his friends. The ambassador watched them for a minute, then walked up to the mezzanine to get a better view. I'll be right back. Commander Lucas was standing just outside his door. He had been watching. "Nicely done, Ambassador. Very nicely done," he said as she came up the stairs. "Thank you, Commander. I meant what I said. They deserve more," the ambassador said. Commander Lucas smiled. "I'll see what I can do while you're gone," he said. The ambassador grinned. "I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Commander. By the way, the tables you set were quite exceptional. They will be icons," she said. "What do you mean, icons?" Commander Lucas asked. The ambassador smiled her Cheshire cat grin. She paused, trying to break the news as gently as possible. "Commander, the reception you arranged for us today is now part of my formal treaty archive and will be referenced as such. It celebrates our new mutual defense treaty with Aldaran. Congratulations. You, your staff, the station, and the tables you set for us are going to be part of Alliance history. I'll ask Beth to send you a copy of the footage as soon as she has it ready," she said. Commander Lucas' eyes got bigger and his mouth dropped open. "Alliance archives? Treaty with the Aldarans? You were recording?" "The Central Alliance has been trying to get the Aldarans to agree to any kind of mutual defense treaty for longer than I can remember. They always said no. What did you do?" he asked. The ambassador nodded. "I reminded them that they were out here long before we were, and that we were not asking them to defend us in the sense of being cannon fodder. We are asking them to show us how to defend ourselves and to lend their considerable skills to the fight," she said. Commander Lucas shook his head. "I don't get it. You didn't ask them to help defend us?" he asked. "No, Commander, I didn't. I asked them to defend themselves," the ambassador said. Commander Lucas nodded. "You really are good," he said. The ambassador smiled. "I had help, Bob," she said. Commander Lucas nodded and grinned. "Thank you, Ambassador. I will let my staff know. We're going to be in the history archives," he said. He was still trying to come to terms with it. "You set a nice table, Bob. Very nice," the ambassador said with a big smile. She stood up, nodded, and walked out the door. "We're going to be in the history archives," Commander Lucas muttered. Something to do. The ambassador's quarters on the Magellan. The ambassador had invited her classmates to her quarters for dinner. They would be leaving for their respective missions in the morning. They had practiced drills and run scenarios until they couldn't come up with any more possibilities. They knew what they each might need to do. They had finished eating and were lingering around the table. None of them wanted to go. "This was nice, Micah," Galen said. He put down his glass, pushed his plate aside, and leaned back in his chair. He smiled and rested his hand on his stomach. The ambassador grinned happily. "Thank you, but I didn't do it. The doctor said he wanted to practice. What he can do with simple foods is impressive, isn't it?" she asked. "He's very good," Centaur said. He nodded approvingly as he picked up another pie. "High praise coming from you," the ambassador said. They all laughed. Centaur finished the pie and looked around the table. "Are we ready?" he asked. Biani nodded. "I think so," Galen said. "Yes," Mara replied. The ambassador looked at each of them and nodded. "We have something to do," she said, beginning the invocation. "It will take all of us," Mara rejoined, "and all our skills," Biani added. "We do not know what we must do," Galen said. "We must succeed," Centaur said, completing the refrain. The ambassador reached for Centaur's hand. "So we begin," she said. Centaur reached for Maru's hand. "I know the path," he said. Mara reached for Galen's hand. "I see the changes," she said. Galen reached for Biani's hand. "I form the bridge," he said. Biani reached for the ambassador's hand. "I carry the light," she said. The ambassador bowed her head. "I keep the balance," she said. She looked up. "We are different and the same. We return to one and become one. We become one. We are one," they said in unison. The ambassador gripped Centaur and Biani's hands. "In the center there is balance," she said. Then she released her hands. "And new beginnings," Centaur said. Then he released his hands. "We start," Maru said. Then she released her hands. "We continue," Galen said. Then he released his hands. "We remain," Biani said. Then she released her hands. "We are one," they said in unison. They sat quite still for a long time. Only their eyes moved from one to another. Then Centaur sat back. So did the others. They looked at each other with a new sense of familiarity. "This is going to be interesting. Maru said, looking at Micah. "I told you I was open to other suggestions," the ambassador replied, grinning at her. It will be fine. We will be fine. I will be fine, Galen repeated, only half joking. You will be fine, Galen. I've got you, Maru thought. She didn't say anything. You are so calming, thanks, Galen said aloud, smiling at her. Wait, how did you, he asked. Maru laughed. Biani smiled at Galen. You will need a few hours to get used to us being in your head, Galen. Maru and I are accustomed to each other and the changes we need to make. With all of us, it may take a day or two. Then we will become more like side dishes, available if you are still hungry, but not the main course, she said. They all laughed at her analogy. Centaur smiled and looked over at Biani. Well, that's different. I didn't need to hear you laughing. I felt it, he said. That's the idea. We'll be joined like this until we get back, Maru said. Galen shook his head solemnly. Or not. If one of us falls, we will all know, he said. We're not going to fail. We will have what we need. We will all return, the ambassador said quietly. Maru smiled. Your confidence is very appealing. Thanks, she said. So what are we having for dinner when we meet back here in 3 weeks? Galen asked. The ambassador grinned playfully. Yang she asked. Galen shook his head and laughed. Great idea, Biani said with a huge grin. Maru sat back in his chair and grinned. Centaur looked calmly around the table. Let's all come back, he said. The ambassador raised her glass. To our reunion dinner, here, 3 weeks, she said. They each picked up their glasses. 3 weeks, they said together, and drained their glasses. Preparing the ground. The bridge on the Magellan. The screens on the bridge of the Magellan showed the 4 other ships and the station. Centaur was with Pak, Maru with Rai, Biani with Shora, and Galen with Beale. They were ready to depart. The feed was also being sent to the large view screen on the station. The ambassador looked at her team, Captain Logan and his crew. She took a deep breath. Today we will write a new chapter in the history of the Central Alliance. Our honor, our courage, our ingenuity, and our friendships will be tested. Let our descendants look at us and say with pride, those were my ancestors, she said. She grew quiet. Then she spoke in the old language. May the memories and spirits of our heroes walk with us into tomorrow, she said. She stepped closer to the screen, showing her 4 old friends, bowed her head, then looked up. So we begin, she said. They nodded to her and to each other. So we begin, they echoed in unison. The comm links to the ships faded. The comm link to the station was still active. The ambassador looked at the screen and smiled. Commander Lucas, we're planning to come back this way in a few weeks, she said. Commander Lucas grinned at the reference. We'll keep the lights on for you, Ambassador. See you soon, he said. The comm link faded. The ships pulled away from the station one by one, each in good time. Going to find out. Space. The starships moved away from the space station and fanned out toward their respective destinations. As soon as they were clear of the station and each other, they engaged their star drives. Short-range cruisers had been prepped and were in the hangars on each ship. The Aldarans would use them to take Centaur, Galen, Maru, and Biani to their target systems. Each of the 5 starships dropped off their cruisers and turned toward the Perseus transit. It would take them a few days to get there, even with the star drives. They would be seeding or eco-forming planets and setting up barriers. Each ship had a region and a set of targets. They'd practiced so many times they were clocking times without a clock. They were supposed to return and pick up the cruisers in 2 weeks. Then head back to the space station. Everything went smoothly. The starships completed the seeding, terraforming, placed the sensors, and got the EM barriers set up without encountering any other ships. There wasn't much out there. It was mostly just a really long ride. Centaur and Pak had taken the furthest system of the 5. It would let him get a sense of that region of the galaxy. They were going to try to find out how the Olmeri were moving, so at least they might be able to predict where they were going to go next. Biani and Rai went to the left. Maru and Shora went to the right. The Council had reports of some sort of resistance in both those systems. They were hoping to get more information about Olmeri culture and make contact with the resistance. Galen and Beale were going to the closest system. It was the newest system to be taken over by the Olmeri. Galen wanted to see firsthand what was going on. He was also going to look for weaknesses. The ambassador was going to the center, the one that seemed to have the largest concentration of Olmeri. It was the riskiest of the sectors they had plotted. It was also their best chance to lure as many of the Olmeri as possible into their trap. Let's get closer. Kell's cruiser. The ambassador, Beth, Namani, and the doctor were on Kell's cruiser. They were going to what looked like a central system for the Olmeri. Kell swung around yet another asteroid. The ambassador smiled. You make that seem so easy and smooth, too, she said. Kell smiled. Thank you, Ambassador. We're coming up on our target system. First, we'll make a pass or two around the outside. Then we'll do a flyby of the 4 outer planets. We want to get as close to the 5th planet, he said. The ambassador looked around. Doctor, Namani, Beth, are you ready? She asked. Yes, Ambassador, we're ready. They all chimed in together. They were going to be taking the bio and eco readings as they passed through the system. Kell started a series of twists and turns that he hoped would make them appear to be a wandering comet or large asteroid. It was part navigation, part being able to feel the gravity fields, and part intuition. When to speed up, when to slow down, when to turn. He'd learned to disguise his craft's movements to match his current surroundings when needed. That skill was another of the reasons Aldaran pilots were legendary. So far so good, Ambassador. They haven't noticed us, he said. They saw a few Olmeri ships heading toward the inner planets. Kell kept close to them when he could. His cruiser was too small to be noticed by the long-range sensors. He showed up as just another Aldaran cruiser on local sensors. Ambassador, we're approaching the 5th planet, he said. The ambassador got up and went to look out the main viewer. There was more activity around this planet than around all the other planets combined. Dozens of ships were moving in and out of orbit. Several large ships that could be space stations were clustered in orbit. They each had a broad circular crown and a long pylon below. The ambassador leaned forward and pointed at the pylons. Wonder what those are, she asked. Namani shook his head. Some sort of fueling station, maybe. The smaller ships seemed to hover then fly off. The larger ships look like they're tethered somehow, he said. The ambassador straightened and looked at Kell. Can we get closer, she asked. If you sit down, Kell said. He turned just a little and looked up. The ambassador grinned. I'm going, she said. She took her seat and strapped in. Make sure your seat belts are fastened and your seat backs are in the upright and locked position, Kell said. Beth settled into her seat. My recorders are active, Ambassador, she said. The doctor and Namani set their recorders to auto and checked their seat belts. The doctor looked over at Namani. Namani nodded. We're ready, the doctor said. Kell looked at the ambassador. The ambassador nodded. Take us in, she said. Kell maneuvered so they were in the shadow of a small transport. Then he took a position just underneath one of the larger ships. Their sensors won't pick us up and they can't see us here, he said. Could they see us from those windows, Beth asked. She pointed at an array of windows just below what looked like a docking clamp. It's possible, Kell replied. What are those lights for? They keep repeating some sort of cycle, the ambassador said. She pointed at a series of lights next to the clamp. Kell looked at the lights and the pattern. They look like charging lights. Old-fashioned charging lights, he said. Beth quickly turned to watch the lights. No way. Even our most basic ships have fusion drives. The core might need some adjustments from time to time, but they last, 300, 400 years or so, she said. The ambassador shook her head and looked at Kell. Maybe. But they have long-range ships. For that, they need a stable fuel supply, she said. Namani pointed at one of the screens. Ambassador, I'm definitely showing some sort of signal from the pylon to the ships that are tethered. Several of the smaller ships are receiving it as well, he said. The ambassador smiled. Get as much data as you can. Whatever this is could be very useful, she said. Kell hovered under the larger ship. The doctor, Namani, and Beth collected readings. I'll be right back. Through the looking glass. Kell's cruiser, the Olmeri station. The flashing lights next to the clamp began to slow and become steady. A figure appeared in the window on the Olmeri station. The ambassador was standing behind Kell, watching the lights. She looked up to see several Olmeri at the window, jumping and pointing at the ship. "Oh, crap. Kell, they've spotted us," she said. Kell nodded and started setting a course. The ambassador started back to her seat. She turned. "Wait, we need to do something first. Beth, quickly," she said. Beth unbuckled her seat belt and hurried to the pilot's chair and strapped in. Kell ran to Beth's seat. He closed the panel they had rigged to conceal Beth's seat. From the front and the sides, the chair looked like a component cabinet. The ambassador rested her hand on Beth's shoulder. "Turn the ship and move us just a little closer so they can see us clearly through the windows. Namani, can you open a video comm link to that screen?" she asked. She pointed to a screen inside the window. Namani grinned. "Yes, Ambassador, I can most definitely hack their system. Give me just 1 second. Okay, you're on," he said. The ambassador stood up straight, smiled, and waved. "Hello, so nice to see you today. This is Beth. Beth is my pilot," she said. She patted Beth's shoulder. Beth smiled and waved. "Hi, I'm Beth. Very pleased to meet you," she said. "Hi, I'm Dr. Gray. How are you?" the doctor said. He waved and smiled. Namani shook his head. He couldn't help but laugh. Why did the ambassador think taunting the Olmeri was a good idea? She had an uncanny ability to taunt their enemies without actually doing anything more than being polite. She was good at it, too. Several more Olmeri had gathered around the screen. A few more were visible in the window. They were shaking their fists at her ship and jumping up and down angrily. The ambassador could hear them yelling through the comlink. She took a step away from Beth's chair and turned so she was facing another screen to redirect their attention. She took a fighting stance. "I am Ambassador Michael Lawrence. I was told you were looking for me," she said. She stood still. She looked at the screen. Then she shifted forward and started waving at them again. "I am so happy I had the chance to meet you today. We'll be going now. See you soon. Bye," she said. She cut the link. "Kell," she called out. Kell was already at the pilot's chair waiting for Beth to unstrap. Beth ran back to her seat and strapped in. The ambassador did the same. "Seats, please," Kell said. He started gradually moving toward the outer planets. "Ambassador, your invitation appears to be working better than we thought it might. They are definitely going to follow us. Several groups of smaller ships are massing near one of the larger ones. The largest one is no longer tethered," he said. The ambassador grinned. "Don't lose them. Remember, they are supposed to be able to follow us," she said. "How easy should I make it?" Kell asked. "Not too. Make them work for it," the ambassador said. The doctor grinned and tightened his seatbelt. "Excellent. We're going for a ride," he said. Namani looked over at Beth. They both laughed. Kell continued moving quickly toward the outer planets. He deliberately made mistakes. As he came around a small moon, he got a little too close. He made 2 more mistakes to avoid some large asteroids. He wanted the Olmeri to see him make mistakes. That was part of their plan. The large Olmeri ship had started accelerating towards them as they approached the outer planets in the system. The smaller ship stayed close to the larger one. Namani pointed at the clusters on the sensor. "Look at that. Do the smaller craft have a range limit? They're sticking real close to the larger ship," he said. Kell shook his head. "Range limits won't help us if they get close. There are too many of them. I can outmaneuver the larger ship. That's easy. There are too many of the smaller ones. It'd be like flying through a meteor shower. We're going to get hit," he said. The ambassador nodded to Kell. "Let's not let them get that close. Can you make it seem like we are getting away, but something happens and then they might catch us? We don't want to actually get away. We want them to follow us," she said. "Should we leave some meat pies for them too?" Namani asked. The doctor grinned. "Can we have some? Beef or chicken?" he asked. They all laughed. Follow me all the way home." Kell's cruiser. The ambassador, Beth, the doctor, and Namani were strapped into their seats. Kell was playing interstellar cat and mouse with the Olmeri. He tried to make the ride smoother when he could, but it wasn't a smooth ride. He would accelerate to get a good lead on the ships, then come around a large asteroid too close and brake, giving them a chance to catch up. Just as they got almost close enough, he'd lose them again, only to make another deliberate mistake so they would believe they could catch him again. Beth looked at the short-range screens. "They seem determined they're still with us," she said. Kell nodded. He looked at the navigation screens. "We're almost at the outer barrier," he said. Ambassador, I'm showing the sensors are all in place, Namani said. The ambassador took a deep breath. Very well. Let's hope this works. Take us through, Kell, she said. Kell slowed down to let the larger ship get closer. He wanted to make sure it followed him. The smaller ships started to extend their range to close in on him. This could be a chance to eliminate some of those smaller ships, Ambassador, he said. If you have to, but don't try. That's not our goal, the ambassador said. Kell nodded. Understood, he said. Make sure you are securely strapped in, the ambassador said. The doctor grinned. When do we get to go up? I like roller coaster rides, he said. Beth shook her head. Kell chuckled. Soon, doctor. Very soon, he said. He adjusted their course so they would just skirt the inside of the asteroid belt. He'd be dodging asteroids and the Olmeri. He was more worried about the asteroids. It worked. Several dozen of the smaller ships that had been closing on him followed him into the asteroid belt. They didn't last long. He tried to make it seem as if he was just very lucky. He used the ship's lasers to clip some of the asteroids so it looked like they had hit the ship. He brought the ship out of the belt and turned back toward the Olmeri who hadn't followed him. He flew straight towards them as if he hadn't been paying attention to where they were. Then he banked hard and turned toward the first of the systems they had planned to seed. Some of the smaller ships came out to intercept. He turned and flew back toward the asteroid belt, leading the Olmeri through a large, stable gap. The Olmeri took the bait. The starships had set up the gap so Kell could bring the Olmeri through without triggering any impulse. The plan was for them to activate it on their way back. Kell slowed down to make sure the Olmeri followed him. He looked over at the medium and short-range sensors to track their positions. He saw a large Olmeri ship pass through the belt and move towards the closest of the systems they'd seeded. Ambassador, it seems to be working. They are following us, he said. The ambassador looked up at an array of charts. Take us into the upper atmosphere over the 7th planet. We targeted it for extensive eco-forming. It should be very hard for the Olmeri to resist, she said. Kell maneuvered the cruiser so the Olmeri could track where he was going but would not be able to catch him. He entered the atmosphere and took a low orbit around the planet's southern axis. The Olmeri wouldn't be looking for them there. They waited. Namani sat up and leaned forward. The Olmeri are here. The large ship has stayed in high orbit. A handful of smaller ones are in the atmosphere. It looks like they're landing. They don't seem to be looking for us anymore, he said. The ambassador smiled. Exactly what we wanted. Let's give them a little more time. It's a long way back to the space station, and I'd rather not have company, she said. Kell nodded. More and more of the Olmeri craft landed on the planet. The ambassador sighed. Okay, I think we've seen enough. Kell, she said. Make sure you are strapped in. I can outmaneuver the larger one, but if we get too close, the smaller ones could overtake us. It would be a problem, Kell said. The ambassador frowned and smiled. We're going home, Kell. You've got this, she said. Kell turned and grinned at her. Can I? He asked. Yes, the ambassador said, smiling at him. Let's go home then, Kell said. He set the controls to full manual and took the ship out of orbit. The forward motion changed slightly as he disengaged the automated controls. He pulled up and sent the cruiser into a graceful sweep around the planet, using its gravity to propel them back toward the asteroid belt. Thanks to that, they were moving quite a bit faster than normal. The Olmeri were caught by surprise. They couldn't power up the large ship fast enough to pursue them. Kell evaded the few smaller ships that tried to catch him. They weren't fast enough. They seemed to lose interest and turn back. He started to relax a little, then he looked at the forward sensors. Ambassador, we have more company, he said. They'd been so busy leading the one Olmeri ship to the planet and watching what happened with that ship that they had not paid attention to what the other ships they'd seen around the planet were doing. The ambassador looked at the sensors. Oh dear, I count 3 of their large ships on this side of the barrier. This is both a good thing and a not-so-good thing. They've seen us, haven't they? She asked. Namani nodded. Yes, Ambassador. They are increasing speed and spreading out. They've definitely seen us, he said. The ambassador pouted. Oh, pooh, not again. I would rather not be their guest for dinner. Well, Kell, it seems we're going to have a chance to field test a few more of your upgrades after all, she said. Kell nodded. I can think of no better time, Ambassador. Make sure your straps are tight, he said. He changed his trajectory to tack left and down as if he was going to try to slip under the Olmeri ships and accelerated. Several of the small ships turned to follow. He kept going, waiting for the larger ships to commit. Then he pulled up hard and turned sharp to the right. They were too big to change direction that fast. The smaller ships had started grouping at different points, looking for where they could get out in front of him or where they could come in from the sides. They made some test runs, then started in earnest. Kell turned and twisted the ship into pretzel shapes that only his mother would appreciate. He did a forward and back arc with a twist that took out 5 of their craft. They were trying to follow him, but they all flew into each other. It was a thing of beauty. The Olmeri were like a swarm of mosquitoes that couldn't quite get a bite because their intended food was moving too fast. He skipped past 4 more and headed into the asteroid belt. He twisted and turned, bringing the ship out on the other side. The Olmeri that had tried to follow him through the belt had been destroyed or had given up and rejoined the larger ships. He leveled off. "We should have a smooth ride the rest of the way back," he said. The ambassador smiled. Her eyes were wide open, and she had just a tinge of green in her voice. "Kell, you are amazing. I have a great deal of appreciation and respect for your skills. However, there are those times when I wish you didn't need to exercise them all at the same time," she said. Kell looked at her and grinned. "I'm going to second that," the doctor said. Kell smiled at him. "I didn't expect to hear that from you, Doctor. You do look a little unwell," he said. "I have my days," the doctor replied. He grimaced just a little. "Ambassador, you need to see this," Namani said. He patched the video sensor through to the main screen. "That's the 5th Olmeri ship to have come through the gap," he said. Kell frowned. "How many more are there? We need to close that opening before we leave this sector," he said. "That appears to be the last one. I don't see any more on the long-range scans," Namani answered. "Close it. Let's get out of here," the ambassador said. Kell fired 2 short blasts into the clumps of asteroids on each side of the gap, breaking them up. With gravity and a little magnetic help, the pieces began distributing themselves across the gap. Then he turned the cruiser toward their rendezvous coordinates with the Magellan. They weren't followed. The ambassador sat back in her chair. "How many did you say, Namani?" she asked. 5, Namani replied. The ambassador shook her head in disbelief. "They all followed us? All of them?" she asked. Beth sat forward. "Ambassador, I've been monitoring their comms. I can't understand everything, but your name keeps coming up. They are very unhappy with you, more than just unhappy. They are enraged you would do such a thing." The ambassador, Kell, and Namani all doubled over with laughter. "What's so funny?" Beth asked. The ambassador sat up and tried not to laugh. She grinned. "We just counted coup at one of their worlds, and their leadership knows it. Of course they're not happy. Wait until they find out they are stuck here. Kell, can we swing around and make it so they have less chance of finding that gap?" she asked. Kell chuckled. "Yes, Ambassador," he said. He touched a control panel as he swung around under the asteroids. "That does it. That gap is now littered with minerals, other asteroids, and a few random viruses. They won't be coming back this way again." That's all for tonight. Join us next time when the ambassador calls Beth and Namani to help with her reports. She remembers her early years with Master Ty and makes a decision that will change Beth's life forever. You've been listening to Storytime, old time radio for a new era. Thank you. Good night.